Well, hello and welcome to tonight's event, Decoding Bird Names with our special guest, Bob Bell. My name is Sue Alexness, and I'm the manager of volunteers, fundraising, and community partnerships with Burlington Green Environmental Association. And on behalf of Burlington Green, I'm just really delighted that you're with us. And I want to extend thanks and gratitude to each of you for joining us tonight. This webinar is part of Burlington Green's Nature Friendly Burlington program, and that's designed to connect more of the community to local green space, to stewardship opportunities, and the multitude of benefits that nature experiences provide. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're fortunate to reside on. This land acknowledgement is for Burlington Green's Eco Hub in Burlington, Ontario. And if you're joining us from somewhere else, we encourage you to take a moment and acknowledge the land where you are. In Burlington, our work with the community takes place within the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And we recognize this land as being home and the traditional territory to Indigenous people since time immemorial. We honor all past and present First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people, and we recognize their leadership in protecting and caring for Mother Earth. We join them in honoring and respecting the land, waters, plants, animals, four directions, and all of the wonderful elements of creation that exist. Burlington Green has much to learn from Indigenous people, and we encourage everyone to continually learn from and about the Indigenous community where you live and how we can each meaningfully honor the calls to action for truth and reconciliation. Thank you. All right, let's meet Bob. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Bob Bell. We're so excited to have him back. Bob is passionate about sharing the joy of birding with people of all skill levels. He enjoys introducing them to the huge variety of beautiful birds that can be seen right here in the Hamilton and Burlington areas. Bob has generously presented at 6 previous events, webinars with Burlington Green, and recordings of all of them are available on our YouTube channel. So while Bob gets ready to share his screen and unmute, please join me in welcoming Bob to share his passion and inspire others to take in the sights and sounds of nature all around us and to support and protect local birds. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Sue. If you just bear with me for a second till I
No,
share.
no worries. I think if you go ahead, I'll stop sharing my screen and you can start sharing yours when you're ready. And
Are you seeing my screen now?
I'm not yet, but I'm sure it'll come up soon.
Because it says you are screen sharing.
Bob, yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. So one more thing, I need to share my computer sound.
You're
Okay. So
you're a trooper, Bob. Thanks.
Sue, if you can give me a thumbs up, you can see my slides, okay?
I can't, but Manuela can. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing them, but it sounds like they're good.
Okay. Sorry everyone for the delay in the start. My computer chose a very bad time to basically die on me. So welcome to this talk. It's a great turnout. Thank you very much. For those of you of my vintage who grew up watching Bugs Bunny cartoons, you probably remember Yosemite Sam would be thundering around with all his expressions and curses, and one of them was that I remember is "you lily-livered, yellow-bellied sapsucker." Well, a yellow-bellied sapsucker is one of the birds that I'm going to be discussing this evening. So again, a thank you to Sue and Burlington Green. I can't believe this is my 7th time here. I appreciate the opportunity to share this passion I have. I really encourage you in the audience to make a donation to Burlington Green. They do such incredibly good work, and it's never been more important. And yet, it's embarrassing to say I've said that every year for 6 years. It's never been more important, and every year it's more important. So please do. A very quick word about me. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario. My dad was a high school science teacher and a vice principal, and he's the one who really instilled in me my love of science of all types, nature, and the great outdoors. So it's not surprising I ended up with a career that essentially combines all of those as an exploration geologist. And I worked for 35 years all over the world. The map shows some of my adventures before I got sidelined by a tick and contracted Lyme disease, and I had to retire prematurely. And at that point, I was serving as the CEO of a Toronto Stock Exchange listed junior mining company. But very quickly, I discovered the healing power of birds, that they were very therapeutic for my mental and physical health, a great coping mechanism for me dealing with my chronic pain, or as I like to joke, my limitations. And so I wrote my book about it, as Sue's already mentioned, Out of the Limelight and Into the Sunlight, Birding as Therapy for the Chronically Ill. Locally, it's available at Wild Birds Unlimited, Indigo, Urban Nature, Different Drummer, King West Books, and probably other stores that I'm not aware of. Online from my publisher Hancock or Amazon or Indigo. Quite proud to say it's at the gift store and two of the best birding spots, not only in Ontario, but in the world at Algonquin Park and in Point Bewley. And I know a number of the local libraries carry it as well. So this talk tonight, there are just so many silly and funny names of birds that I thought this might be a really fun topic to discuss. Now, I'm only going to be talking, I'm going to restrict the birds I talk about to ones that you might encounter here in Ontario, which is a bit of a shame because there's some fantastic names out there around the world, like the bare-faced go-away bird, the satanic nightjar, monotonous lark, a dunkadoo, stank hen, and the plain chakalaka, which is, I guess, the less flamboyant cousin of the boom chakalaka. And this is a plain chakalaka picture I took in Rio Grande Valley of Texas a few years ago. So you're going to see lots of bird photos. I took them all except for three, and I'll acknowledge them when I come to them. So the naming protocols in North America didn't just spring into existence. They evolved over time, and it was pretty chaotic. For example, it's a beautiful ruddy duck that I saw at La Salle Marina a few years ago. Just 100 years ago, it had something like 92 different names, just depending on where you were living in North America or what pond or creek you're on. Names like blatherskite bobber, buck ruddy, bumblebee buzzer, and chunk duck. And cedar waxwings were known as cherry birds, chatters, cedar birds, topknots, English robins, yellowtails. And it seemed like every wave of European immigrants, as they colonized North America, they described the birds in their own language, applied names of birds that kind of looked similar to ones from back at home. It was all very haphazard. They called bluebirds blue robins. And some of the names they seemed to be based on misunderstandings or shifts in pronunciations or regional accents. So, for example, in some areas, Canada geese was mispronounced as Kennedy. Widgeons, which is a duck, were Norwegians. Great blue herons were blue herrings, and sandhill cranes were Samhill cranes. Sabitrin seems to be a contraction of it's a bittern. And here's a bittern that I saw in Grindstone Creek a couple of years ago, actually more than that, 4 or 5 years ago. So out of all this chaos came the formation of the American Ornithological Union in 1883, or AOU. And their main goal at the beginning was to sort out all this unstable, nomenclature. So it took them about 3 years to devise a system of scientifically naming the known birds at that time in North America. Now, I do want to point out it doesn't seem like they consulted with the folks that were already here, the First Nations. There doesn't seem to be Indigenous names incorporated. And I should add that this system continues to evolve. A lot of it has to do with modern technology. The DNA is showing that some birds where we have two species, they're actually genetically identical and they get lumped as one, and vice versa. And there's a big movement right now to rename birds with eponymous names, which is they're named in honor of somebody. And I'm going to be coming to that. So here's an example that, they didn't always get it right. This gorgeous long-tailed duck. These are Arctic sea ducks. We're very lucky down here because literally tens of thousands of them come and spend their winter on Lake Ontario. So we get to see them along the shorelines. They had been called long-tailed ducks previously, but they also had other folk names such as noisy ducks, old wives, old squaws, and long-tailed ducks. And it's hard to believe that the AOU landed on old squaw, and that's the name they chose. And it wasn't changed until July of 2000. Um, so if you've got an older field guide and you're looking for long-tailed duck, you won't find it. You'll find old squaw. So what I did was I thought of 9 different categories of bird names that I want to go through one at a time. And the first one that I wish to start with is birds that are named for the male's plumage and often the male's breeding plumage. And my first example is the purple finch. So here's a pair at my feeders, the male in the back and the female in the front. And you can see she's not purple, and the name purple finch is not very appropriate for her. So a bit of a background on this. Many birds are what's called sexually dimorphic. And what that means is the males and females can look quite different. The males are often much brighter and flashier, and the females more camouflaged, which makes sense. They're protecting eggs and nests and babies. And furthermore, the males are often out in the open, showing off and singing, trying to attract a mate. So they're more visible. And all of this leads to gender bias, including in the naming protocol. So a lot of birds got named for the males and doesn't do the females any good. And I must admit, I'm guilty of this gender bias too, because a lot of the photos, most of the photos you're going to see are of males. So I want to challenge you right now, as Sue had said, throw your answer in the chat line. If you know what this bird is, bear in mind this category is birds named for the male's plumage. So you're looking at a picture of a female bird. It's said to be one of the most frequently misidentified birds in North America. And I'll give you one hint that they frequently live in marshes and swamps. So, I can't see the chat line. I don't know if anyone's actually
We we
answering.
we have an answer. We have an answer. We have
Okay,
the correct answer, female red-winged blackbird. All right. Good job, Sylvia.
there you
A
go.
couple other folks got it. Yep.
I'm going to have to come up with some harder challenges. So, as you can see, she's not black and she does not have red wings. Okay, now this one I'm not going to challenge you because I think a lot of people are familiar with this species. This is the female northern cardinal. And to my eye, I think her soft pastel coloring is actually prettier than the male stark red. So anyway, that's another example. And why cardinal? Well, they're actually named for the red robes that were worn by Roman Catholic bishops who were the cardinals, who were the senior bishops. So here's another challenge. Help yourself to the chat line. You're looking at, again, obviously a female bird, soft, it's almost grayish yellow, dull yellow, with gray wings, fairly large beak. And I'll give you 15, 20 seconds to think about that. And,
Nothing in the chat yet, Bob. I got my eyes
uh,
on it there.
I-
Do you have any hints on this one?
um, not really. She does
Ooh,
not look like.
Emily got it. Emily got it. She wasn't sure, but it's female scarlet
There,
tanager.
there you go, female scarlet tanager.
Good job, Emily.
And I should say that immature birds of either gender, and even the males in the non-breeding plumage in the winter, look more or less like mom. They look like the female. Okay, here's another one, another challenge for you. If anybody has any idea what this bird might be, fairly slender, dull brown, a little streak on her breast, fairly big beak.
I love this. Folks are putting in their guesses, and I love that. There's no need to be right. You can just put in any guess, and I'll go ahead and say this is a female indigo bunting. Did
And
we
and
did
there you go. I
get
mean,
one? That was a tough one, Bob. I don't think anybody. We had some good guesses there, but
okay, good.
if you want to hear, that is a toughie. So Sylvie says that's a toughie. We had American Goldfinch, Scarlet Tanager, and pine siskin as guesses, but yep.
Yeah, so you can see there's the male indigo bunting on the right. And here's another shot of one that was in my backyard last summer. And just a fun fact that there's no blue pigment. So any birds that are blue, including, blue jays, bluebirds, indigo buntings, they don't derive that color from anything they're eating. It's not from their diet. It's actually a structural feature of their feathers. The way the feathers refract the light to our eyes makes them appear blue, and yet in actual fact, they can look brown depending on the angle of the light. Here's another one. Um, it's sitting in my our red bud in our backyard. They returned from their winter vacation about May 3rd. Big, thick, huge beak on her, and brown, soft brown, streaky. Anybody getting this one?
We've got two already. Oh, we got three. Wait, we got three on this one. Four. Yeah, we got yep, we got four folks got this one right.
Excellent. And
Yep,
this,
Ross, Sylvia, Sherry, Eva. Yeah, amazing.
okay, and that is a rose-breasted grosbeak. And look how different she is from the male. No rose-breasted breast on her. And once again, even the baby males look like mom, and then they eventually molt into the adult plumage. Now, I'm not going to ask you this one. I think everybody knows our hummingbird. In this part of North America, we only have one species, and that's the ruby-throated hummingbird. So here's the mother sitting on her little nest, but look at her throat. There's no ruby throat. So here's the female on the left and the male on the right. And the males, even the males, the red is not always ruby. Sometimes it looks black even, depending on the sun and the way they hold their feathers. So another inappropriate name. And this gender bias even applies to ducks. Here's a pair of redheads with the male, the drake on the left, and the female on the right. Now here's the toughest one. It might take one of my birding friends if they're on here to answer this one. This is a very, very tough one, I must admit. So I'll give it a few seconds in case anybody.
Folks are thinking, and we have a guess. We have a guess that it's a. I think a redhead was for the last one. Yeah, ruby-crowned kinglet is a guess. Orange-crowned warbler. Um, Another
Those are,
ruby-crowned kinglet female. Carolina wren. So
those
folks,
are those are pretty good guesses, but no. And I'll show you here. Here's a pair of them. That is a female black-throated blue warbler. And when I came across this pair, I mean, it's so rare to see the female. When I came across this pair here in the Dundas Valley, I knew I couldn't get them both in focus, so I had to choose one or the other, and I chose her because it was so rare to see her. So I'll show you a better picture of him in a minute. But they look so different that early ornithologists thought that they were actually two separate species.
they do look really different. Sylvia is saying that female warblers in general it can be challenging.
She's right. So here's the male, a better view of the male, black-throated blue. But I came across this, and this is absolutely priceless. This is an excerpt from a field guide that was written by Florence Merriam Bailey when she was only 26. It was the first ever field guide to American birds, 1889, and she called it Birds Through an Opera Glass, or binoculars of the day. And I'm going to read this to you. She was so ahead of her time. Like other ladies, the little feathered brides have to bear their husbands' names, however inappropriate. What injustice! Here's an innocent creature with an olive green back and yellowish breast has to go about all her days, known as the black-throated blue warbler, just because that happens to describe the dress of her spouse. The most she has in common with him is a white spot on her wings, and that does not come into the name at all. Talk about women's wrongs. And the poor little things can't even apply to the legislature for a change in name. Kudos to Florence Merriam Bailey, that 1889. Well, and it's sad to say things didn't improve very quickly. Roger Torrey Peterson is a very famous author of field guides. So all the way up to 1964, here's a scan from one of his field guides. And look how he's tucked the females in behind the males, as if they don't even count. It's almost like an afterthought. So you get to see the males' flashy plumage and the duller females are in behind. So thankfully, the gender bias isn't as bad as it was back then. And I am glad to say we actually do have one exception, reverse. And this is a case of reverse sexual dimorphism, meaning that it's the female that's more colorful and the bird is named for the female. So this is a female belted kingfisher on the top left. And the belt comes from that sort of cinnamon orangey band around her breast and down her flanks. And here's the male, the bottom right, and you can see he's lacking it. So there's one good exception for you.
Bob, Sylvia's sharing another exception, which is I'm going to say it wrong,
Phalaropes.
the phalaropes. Thank you.
They are completely reversed. Like the males sit on the eggs, and I think the female leaves them to it. And yeah, amazing. Okay, my next category is birds that essentially they say their name. They're named for their song or call. And my first example is this eastern towhee. Now, believe it or not, towhees are actually in the sparrow family. So they're not what you typically think of little brown birds. Um, Much bigger and flashier. Now, we didn't, because of my hiccup with my laptop, we didn't get to test drive this. So, Sue, if you can give me a thumbs up if the sound is okay, I'm going to play you a little clip.
Alrighty.
That's coming through okay?
Yep.
Good. So ornithologists thought that sounded like towhee. Now, birders like to say what they're saying is drink your tea. I'll just play it again. Drink your tea. Okay, I think most people know that the chickadees are named for their D D D D D, but what you might not know is that can be an alarm call. And the more D's they say and the more emphatic they are, the greater their perceived threat. Now, they're not very concerned about big raptors like, say, a red-tailed hawk, because they're probably too tiny for it to be bothered with. But smaller, say small owls like a saw-whet owl or a screech owl, they get very upset. And I'm going to play you this clip. It's a screech owl, and screech owls have some pretty spooky sounds. They're like trilling, and then they neigh like a horse, and then you'll hear the chickadees just losing their minds over it. You can hear all those D, 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 Ds. Okay. All right, now it's time to test the audience again, and we'll see if you're not going to get a visual clue from me. You have to put your answer in based on what this call sounds like. I'll play that again.
Some folks I think maybe already know. I don't know if anybody's guessing from the sound alone. I think that would be awfully hard to do, but a lot of folks are putting in killdeer, Bob.
Good answer. And they've just returned in the last, well, to me, in the last few days when I first heard them, sometime in the last week or so, they've come back. So yeah, that's the killdeer. So
Maybe,
let's try another one.
maybe the next one might be easier for some of the newer birders. Some of the experts can hold back. We'll see what happens on the next one.
Okay, and one hint is they pump their tail.
Oh, I see a couple coming in. Ah, yes. Eastern Phoebe. Eastern Phoebe.
So there you go. The phoebes are small little flycatchers. They often build nests right around cottages and annoy the cottagers at 5:30 in the morning when they're calling Phoebe, Phoebe, Phoebe. Okay, let's have another go.
you,
That's a
yeah,
long
you
recording.
folks are getting this one. Yep. It really does sound like whippoorwill, that's for
I
sure.
think that's the one that's probably the most obvious. That's our eastern whippoorwill. And I'm sad to say I haven't heard that in 50 years. I used to hear them at my grandparents' farm in southwestern Ontario when I was a teenager and haven't heard them since. Okay. One more.
All righty.
That's a fun one. I'll play it again. Might be a bit challenging.
All right. Yeah, we've got one saying cuckoo and we've got a woodchuck.
We have two species of cuckoo, yellow-billed and black-billed. This is the yellow. And their calls are, birders that hear much better than I do can tell their calls apart, but they're similar. And you can hear them saying cuckoo, cuckoo. Okay. And my last example is a bird that it wasn't named for the sound of its call, but for when people thought it called. Evening grosbeaks are a beautiful finch, and for some reason, the early settlers thought that they lived in deep, dark forests, and they only came out to the edge of the forest to sing in the evenings. I don't know why, but that mythology stuck, and they're stuck with, misnamed essentially as evening grosbeak. Okay, we move on to my third category is birds that were named for the first place as the first place that someone naming birds saw them. And my first example is this cute little Nashville warbler. So on this map, the blue star, that's Nashville, Tennessee. The yellow behind it is where this bird is only seen during migration. So it does not live there. They breed up in the sort of the pinky orange color at the top up here in Canada, and they spend their winters down in the blue in Mexico into Central America. But it's stuck with the name Nashville warbler. And for some reason, the state of Tennessee got two birds like that. There's a Tennessee warbler, and it's the same story. They actually breed, essentially from Alaska to Newfoundland in the boreal forests, and they winter from Mexico all the way down through the Caribbean, all the way into South America. So they have nothing to do with Tennessee. The most egregious example would be the Cape May warbler. Beautiful warbler. For those that don't know, Cape May is in New Jersey. It's a first point of landfall for a lot of migrating birds. It's kind of like the equivalent of our Point Pelee. And they named it for the one captured there or seen there, and they never saw another one for over 100 years after that. But the name is stuck as Cape May. And you can see, when they saw it there, it was passing back and forth either, from the boreal forests in northern Canada down to the Caribbean. Now, the magnolia warbler wasn't named for the geographic location, but for where it was perched. It was sitting in a magnolia tree. Now, this map is a little bit off, I think, but essentially, where they breed and where they spend the winter, there are no native magnolia trees, but it got the name nonetheless. Okay, moving right along. My next category are birds that European settlers named for birds that reminded them from back at home. And, there are a number of species of pipits in Europe. So when they saw a similar looking bird, they slapped on the name American. So my next challenge for the audience, if you can go to the chat line, is what do these four very different looking birds all have in common? Be interesting to see if how many people get this right. Any answers coming in, Sue?
I'm seeing, yes, yes, very good. Emily has American as a header. Another person, Sylvia also is American. And Sylvia mentioned what they are too.
Oh, bonus points.
Bonus points.
So here we go. American. So we got the American coot, which is the funkiest bird feet in the world, if you can see its feet there. American crow, the redstart is a warbler, and the American kestrel is a falcon. So this is a case of the European settlers slapping the prefix American in front of birds that look similar to ones from back home. Now, this isn't in reference to the United States of America. It's to the Americas, to North America. And another example is our robin. The official name is actually American robin. Um, they're a member of the thrush family. So it's named for the Eurasian robin, the original robin redbreast, which is actually a flycatcher. They're not even related. And here's where I'd like to give great thanks to my good friend Bill McDonald, goes by Billy Mac. Bill runs the Ontario Bird Photography Group on Facebook. If you want to see some awesome bird shots, you can follow that group. And thank you, Bill, for being so kind as to let me use this picture and the next two. So here's somebody guessed goldfinch in a previous picture, I think. Here's our American goldfinch. They don't look like this time of year. They're starting to molt back to yellow, but in the winter they're almost grayish. So here's one in the spring, the red buds and backyard red buds in bloom. Goldfinch, well, there's the European goldfinch that it was named after. To my eye, they don't even look that similar. But anyway, and thank you again, Bill, for your fine photography. And my third example is American tree sparrow. Now, these lovely little sparrows actually breed up in the James Bay lowlands and fairly far north up into the tundra. But they come here. They'll spend their winters here. So that's where I took this picture last January. It's sitting on some goldenrod. And there's the original Eurasian tree sparrow. And again, thanks to Bill for his photography. So we've done birds named American. How about O Canada? And this is just my backyard winter setup. Female evening grosbeak at the seed there, and my Canadian flag. So I think most people know we have our Canada goose, or some birders call it the cobra chicken. They can be pretty hostile and feisty, especially if they're protecting young. But we actually have three birds with the prefix Canada in their names. So I'm just going to pause here and I'll give you a little bit of time. And if you know one or both is even better, throw your comments into the chat line. And let's see, Sue, if anybody.
Yeah, we're getting yeah, a couple folks have shared Canada J,
Yeah.
and but I haven't seen anything. Oh, Dave has tuned in with Canada Warbler.
Woo,
Good job,
okay.
folks.
There we go. So starting with the Canada J, I don't understand why, but it had been called Canada J, and then in 1957 its name was changed to Grey Jay. In 2018 it was changed back to Canada J. So some people still call it Grey Jay, but the name is Canada J. Now, one of the questions that actually came in to the line, but pre-meeting, was why is it called Whiskey Jack? Well, that's an anglicization of a Cree name. So here's where there's an indigenous name, and I'm probably going to totally butcher it. I think they pronounce it Whiskey Jack or something like that, but it's anglicized to Whiskey Jack. Now, a lot of people think it's our national bird. In actual fact, Canada does not have a national bird. What happened was in 2016, the Canadian Geographic magazine ran a competition and voting to see what people wanted. And the Canada Jay, or I guess at that time, Grey Jay, won the contest. But the government has yet to take it up as the official bird. And there's lots of good reasons to choose this as the winner. They're found in every province and territory. They don't migrate. They're smart. They're friendly. Like here's one eating out of my hand in January up at Algonquin Park. They're loyal. They're tough. They actually nest in the winter. They've been seen sitting on eggs at 30 below. And apparently there is a bill before a Senate committee right now to move this along, and I would love to see them become our national bird. And the second one is one of my favorite warblers, the Canada warbler. I just love that necklace around its throat and the big eye ring. Moving on to my next category is birds that have been named for an obscure feature that you may not see out in the field. And my first example are ring-necked ducks. So here you got two male ring-necked ducks on the right and the female on the left. Do you see a ring around their necks? I don't, but I do note a ring around their bill. So why would someone name them after an obscure feature? Well, sadly, back in the day, before there were big zoom cameras and scopes and whatnot, if early naturalists wanted to study a bird, what did they do? They shot it. So they had the bird in hand and they were seeing features that you may or may not see. So it's been very rare where I've actually seen the ring around the neck of a duck. And here you can just see it barely as a little purple band around its neck. I think ring-billed duck would have been a great name, and it would have applied to both genders because they both have that ring bill. Actually, a couple of birds. We have a semi-palmated plover as shown in this picture, and we also have a semi-palmated sandpiper. And semi-palmated means there's partial webbing between their toes. And this is something that's very hard to see on a bird that essentially makes its living running around in the muck and in shallow water where you can't see its feet clearly enough. But none the same, that's where we ended up with semi-palmated. Now, this one's an interesting one. The Eastern kingbirds are flycatchers. They're called king for a couple of reasons. One is they have this red crown, that you can see in this picture. And also, I think because they act very regal, like they're very feisty. In fact, their Latin name is Tyrannus tyrannus, like little dictators. But the interesting part of this story is this is the first kingbird I ever saw when I started birding in 2016. So it didn't mean anything to me to see that crown. Well, since then, I have seen literally hundreds of kingbirds, and I've never seen the crown since. So it's very rare for them to flash it, but they got the name. Another one that seems to be a bit of a stretch is the red-bellied woodpecker. Now, I chose this picture deliberately because it actually does have a fairly strong blush right from the upper breast all the way down to its belly. But often it's just very, very faint. And when you look at its head, you think, why didn't they call it a red-headed woodpecker? Well, it's because that name was already taken. So there's the red-headed woodpecker on the left, and here's a female at one of my feeders on the right, and she's barely got a blush on her lower belly. Okay, so we're going to move now into the next category, and these are the eponymous names I touched on earlier. So Swainson's thrush. Now, who was Mr. Swainson? It's usually men that they were named after. Well, he was an early 1800s a naturalist, ornithologist, and he ended up with three birds named after him. We have a Swainson's warbler, a Swainson's hawk, and a Swainson's thrush. So these names tell you nothing about the bird. They're not descriptive. They don't really help at all. And we apparently have about 150 such names in our part of the world. Now, there is a movement to rename all of these. And it started, they called themselves Bird Names for Birds. And they've been pushing this to rename all eponymous birds. And the powers to be acted fairly quickly and renamed one that had been named for a Confederate general, McCowan's longspur, and renamed it the thick-billed longspur, which is more descriptive. Now, one of the questions that Sue and Manuela sent me that came in before the talk was, what's the status? What's the update on this renaming? And I sent an email off to Query, and unfortunately, I haven't heard back. But my uneducated guess would be that it's going to be a very slow process because they're probably going to be very methodical, very well thought out. They don't want to cause any further confusion in getting it wrong. So they'll probably, try to query a lot of different people and get consensus on good descriptive names. So I don't have a definitive answer. And that Wilson's warbler that I just showed you, I think here's another shot of it. Black-capped warbler would be a lovely name for this bird. So who was Mr. Wilson? Well, he actually has five birds named after him. And he was very much like Audubon. He was a naturalist, ornithologist. He was painting birds. in the early 1800s. So he was about 30 years ahead of Audubon. And in fact, here's someone mentioned phalarope. And I just thought of that now. So here's a pair of Wilson's phalarope, and the more colorful one that's in the water there in this painting, that's the female, and the male is the paler one standing. So Mr. Wilson's got five birds, but the names don't really help you much. Okay, time to challenge the audience again. This is clearly a hawk. It's sitting in my backyard looking down at my feeders, wondering where all the feeder birds went in a panic. They all disappeared. Let's get some answers into the chat line on this one. These,
Ah, oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
I was going to say these birds have adapted very well to urban living, and they will often stalk feeders. And I don't mean stalk by resupplying them; they're stalking them as in hunting the feeder birds.
Right. Yeah. So I'll just share, Bob, as people put their answers in that we're at 8 o'clock. We're at 8 o'clock, and I think we'll be pushing back our end time since we lost some time at the beginning, everybody. So I apologize if folks need to leave at 8:15, which was our planned end time for today's activity. But we have Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawk as requests. And I know those two are very similar looking because I tried to figure out one on my backyard not too long ago.
They are very difficult. And I actually, in one of my previous talks, I went into great length, and I won't now because don't have much time. But the Cooper's is much bigger. You see the gray cap. The Cooper's has a gray cap. The sharp shin, that gray goes down its neck. So they have more like a cape. And there's other differences, but this is a Cooper's. And it's named after William Cooper, who was an American naturalist back in the day. Another bird, Bonaparte's gull. And now it's not named for Napoleon Bonaparte, but it actually is named for his nephew, who was Charles Lucien Bonaparte, was an ornithologist. And this gull is actually in non-breeding plumage. In the summer, their entire head is black. You can just see smudges coming in. Lincoln sparrow is not named for the president, but after Thomas Lincoln, who was a buddy of Audubon's, and Thomas Lincoln had collected, which means he shot, one of these in Labrador and brought it to Audubon. So it ended up with the name Lincoln sparrow. Beautiful little sparrow. My other favorite warbler, Blackburnian, is actually named for a female naturalist, Anna Blackburn, who lived in the 1700s. So I think we're making good progress. I'm trying to go fast here, so make up for my hiccup at the beginning. My next category are birds that actually do have an appropriate name, but they might be confusing unless you dig into it a bit. Right at the beginning, I showed you a picture of cedar waxwings. Well, we actually have two species of waxwings. The other one is the Bohemian. They live further north, and sometimes they come south in the winter. Now, they're called Bohemian because they're extremely nomadic. So they're like hippies with no fixed address. They're always moving around, roaming around in flocks, looking for fruiting trees to eat. The mourning dove, or morning dove, depending on how you spell it. I've seen lots of people post a picture of this, and they would spell it as if it was good morning. But they are actually mourning with the U because they'll play the sound. Their cooing sounds very sad. I hope that's coming through okay.
It's coming through loud and clear and bringing back some childhood memories for me.
Okay. And the next one that might be a bit confusing is the pileated woodpecker. Well, the word pileated comes from a Latin word that means capped. So it's actually referring to that red crest on their heads. This was the inspiration, these birds, for Woody the woodpecker. They're our largest the largest woodpecker in North America. They're about the size of a crow. I was very lucky here to get this shot. That's a female with a so-called mustache, black mustache on her cheek on the left, and you can see the male's on the right is red. And you can see his crest comes right down to his beak, whereas hers stops up on her forehead. The ovenbird is a lovely little warbler that builds its nest on the ground, and it's in the shape, it's dome-shaped with a side entrance. So people thought it looked like an old Dutch oven. So they got the name ovenbird. Prothonotary warblers are named after the bright yellow robes worn by the prothonotaries who were high-ranking officials in the Catholic Church. So like the cardinals, we now have two birds named for officials in the Catholic Church. And they're almost neon yellow. And they like to live in flooded, sort of wet forests, almost swampy forests. So if you see some, you get these great opportunities to get really cool reflection shots, like mirror, mirror on the wall. And best place to go, as far as I know, is Rondo Provincial Park. The boardwalk goes around and you can see them there. A long-eared owl, great name, but those aren't ears. Those are tufts of feathers which help them camouflage. When they get startled, they pull in, and it just looks like a tree trunk. Their ears, like ours, are on the side of their head. Those of you who might have taken in my owl talk 4 years ago, owl ears are actually asymmetric. One is higher on one side of their head than the other. And that allows them to hear essentially in 3D. So they can hone in on a mouse or a vole under a foot of snow. A brown-headed cowbird. Yeah, sure, it's got a brown head, but why is it called a cowbird? Well, the cow refers to bison or buffalo. And out on the prairies, these birds would follow the roaming herds and eat the insects that were being stirred up all the time as the buffalo roamed around. But because of that, the bison were always on the move. They think that's why they evolved to become nest parasites. They don't build a nest, they dump an egg into somebody else's nest and then leave it for the surrogate parent to raise because they weren't in one place long enough to raise a family. We have two species of nuthatch, and the word nuthatch, hatch comes from an old German word for hack. And it refers to how they can crack their way into seeds and nuts. Now, to my ear, their calls sound like either yank, 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 very nasal, or almost like the backup beep on a vehicle. And I'll play that for you. So that's the red-breasted, and the white-breasted is a little bit bigger, and its call is very similar. Okay. Northern saw-whet owl, these are our cutest little murder birds. They're about the size of a pop can. And there's some controversy over the origin of their name. And this was a good question that came in as well on the pre-meeting line. Supposedly their name is derived from their vocalization. I don't have a recording for you, which sounds like a saw or a knife being sharpened on a whetstone, like a squeaky sound. But I've also read another theory is that the saw-whet is derived from the French word souette, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, meaning little owl. So both actually make sense, and I'm not sure which is correct. So my second last category are for birds whose names sound like old-timey insults. And so bufflehead is a duck with a very large blocky head. So before Charlie Brown and Lucy always calling him a blockhead, back in the day people would use the term bufflehead. And that certainly does apply to these ducks. And you can see them at, say, La Salle Marina during the winter. So here's another challenge for the audience, if anybody knows what this bird might be. So I'll just give it a few seconds.
Oh, yeah, we got the answer coming in here.
Okay,
Yellow-bellied sapsucker.
so this is Yosemite Sam's bird, our yellow-bellied sapsucker. It's just one of the prettiest woodpeckers. Beautiful bird. And then finally, the tufted titmouse, which I think is the ultimate cute cartoon bird, just adorable. But anybody my age, well, I grew up watching the Three Stooges, and full confession, I actually still watch them. But Mo had all kinds of insults for Larry and Curly. He'd call them a puddinhead or a chucklehead or porcupine. But every now and then he'd call them, you titmouse. So that's where I think it comes from. But it actually, titmouse literally means small, small bird. They're in the chickadee family. And then finally, my last category, because I don't want you to go away thinking, boy, bird names are all weird. lots of them really are appropriate. And I'll just go through quickly since we're running so late. Some birds that I think have appropriate names, starting with the snowy owl. The mature males are very white. They can be just pure white. The females can have quite a bit of barring on them, more camouflage. Black and white warbler, you might say it should be called a zebra warbler or even a zebra nuthatch because they hang upside down like nuthatches. Swamp sparrow, you never see them outside of a swamp. They're down in the bulrushes. Bald eagle, they don't actually get that so-called bald head, the pure white head, until they're 5 years old. And so this is a good opportunity to just warn people, be cautious about the nonsense you can see on the internet now that AI is so prevalent. I ask you, watch out for AI fakes. If something's too cute to be true, it's probably not true. And the example is this picture on the left. This was going around a couple of years ago. Isn't that cute? Two little babies looking just like mom on the nest. Well, they don't look like that. And the graphic on the right shows the progression. When they're young, they're just totally chocolate brown. And then the white streaking comes in, and over time, they eventually become bald, so-called definitive plumage at the age of 5. Solitary sandpiper. I love this name because in 10 years of birding, I've never seen two. I've never seen more than one at a time. I mean, clearly the species keeps propagating, so they do get together, but solitary is a good name. Pine warbler, when they're on territory, you just never see them outside of a pine tree. When they're migrating, you might see them anywhere, but they do like their pine trees. Trumpeter swan, Burlington should be proud that, you've got one of the beautiful big overwintering colonies at LaSalle Marina under the guidance of Nature Canada and their bird-friendly initiative with when Burlington got certified as bird-friendly city. Um, one of the protocols was they had to name the city bird. It became the official city bird, and they certainly do sound like trumpets. Just like a marching band. The gray catbird. Now, catbirds are in what's called the Mimidae family or mimic family. There's 3 members in addition to the catbird. There's the brown thrasher and the northern mockingbird. So all 3 of these birds, they don't really just sing a short song. To me, I like to say they tell a story. They babble on and on and on, squeaking away, making different noises, but then they can imitate things. Like some of them can imitate a car alarm or a siren going off. But one of the sounds that the catbird makes is the mewing like a cat. Now, you have to listen to it. It doesn't start right at the beginning of this recording, but I'll play it and you'll hear it eventually. There you go. So next time you're out for a walk, and if you hear a cat in the bush, it may not be a cat at all. It could be the gray catbird. Northern shoveler, those my age might remember the actor Jimmy Durante. He was known for having a big schnoz. So I like to say this is the Jimmy Durante of ducks because they're named for their big, broad bill. It's very, very wide at the tip. Red-eyed vireo, when they're younger, their eye isn't quite that red, but a mature adult, their eye certainly is red, so it's a great name. Vireo is actually Latin for I am green. I think it's a bit of a stretch, sort of a greenish hue when they're back. There's also a white-eyed vireo, and again, it's a great name, beautiful bird. And cerulean warbler, just a breathtakingly beautiful blue color on these warblers. And I think this is the last one in this category. We have 2 species of crossbills, red crossbill and white-winged crossbill. And if you can see the bill, the bill, they actually do overlap and cross. And these birds use that to winkle seeds out of pine cones and spruce cones. Okay, so that's sort of it. And now I'm going to go through a few recommended resources. And another question that came in was, how do I identify my birds at my feeders? And well, I already had this ready for you because this works out well. One, if you like to have a book, Feed the Birds is, focused just on feeder birds. It's by Chris Early. Some of you may know Chris, fantastic guy. He's the naturalist at the Guelph Arboretum. He teaches bird courses, well worth attending. And Chris was kind enough to read an advanced copy of my book and write a blurb inside the cover of my book. Download the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's app called Merlin. It's free. You put it on your phone. It's got two main features. One, if you get a picture of a mystery bird, you put it in, Merlin spins away for a few seconds and then gives you an answer that's apparently about 95% correct. It knows where you are with your GPS, so that helps it identify it. But they've added a game changer for me is sound ID. So just go outside, hit record, and you'll start seeing sonograms, little graphs going by with little pictures of the birds. So you'll hear, oh, that bird's singing, that's that. And so you very quickly can learn the birds both visually and by their song. It's a great app. Just for fun, I included this. Some people might have used to enjoy listening to Stuart McLean on CBC radio, Vinyl Cafe Stories. He did one hilarious episode on twitching. Now, twitching is when birders get all excited because there's a rare bird, it's a vagrant, should be in British Columbia, but it's here. It's come to me. I don't need to go to BC. And so this is about 18 minutes of pure laughter talking about birders going crazy over the bird. So, yeah, I couldn't put a link here, but you can Google Vinyl Cafe the bird and you'll find it. This will be in the handout that Sue and Manuela will send you, so you don't need to write it down. And I've mentioned Indigenous names, so I wanted to bring this to your attention. The two field guides. Now, I admit I have not seen these yet. I just became aware of them, but I thought I should let you know that they are available. There's three authors, and in the small world department, the first author is from Manitoulin Island and went to school with my niece when she was growing up there. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. Please follow me on my social media. I post a daily bird or try to on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And again, this will be in your handout, so you don't need to rush to put it down. And I realize I'm preaching to the choir. The fact that you're on here, you already like birds, but I can't stress enough to take up birding as a serious hobby. I mean, we find ourselves now, through no fault of our own, living in a very unstable, very stressful time. Take solace and comfort in birds and birding. A good friend of mine sent me this meme just last week, and I said, that is going in the talk. Somewhere, someone is listening to birds instead of the breaking news, and the world feels kinder there. And, amen. And birding is also very good for your brain. And neighbors of mine were kind enough to make me aware that CBC's Fresh Air on March 7th did a little clip called Bird Watching Could Have Some Excellent Effects on the Brain. And they're talking to a researcher that has shown that by birding, you strengthen your memory and your focus, and it does slow aging on the brain. So maybe there's still some hope for me. So here's the last words I wrote in my book. Life is a journey, and it's incumbent on us to make the best of it. I hope my journey might inspire some folks suffering with a chronic illness to get out of the limelight and into the sunlight, where the singing birds will warm your heart and lift your spirits. And I took this up at our camp up in Algoma near the Sioux, probably about 4:30 in the morning, sun rising in June, and you can just about hear the loons calling. So, in closing, birds bring joy and they connect us to nature and our one and only planet. So I would like to wish everybody good birding, good health, and thank you for attending. So now, Sue, if you'd like, I'll stop sharing and I can answer a couple
Super.
questions.
Yeah,
Answer.
yeah, that would be great, Bob. So we're just
Okay,
gonna,
I'll
yeah,
stop sharing.
and I'm gonna quickly share my screen so people can see again how to enter the prize draw. So you have just a little bit of time. If you didn't enter in the earlier, there's a QR code there, and Manuela's going to put a link in the chat. We're going to jump into our Q&A, and you're going to need to be quick to enter the prize draw if you haven't already. Um, So so let's jump into that. I'll leave that on the screen for a minute, Bob, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
And yeah, we have a bunch of questions. So there were some questions about the
Sue, sorry, Sue, before you do those,
Yep.
I've got a few that I didn't answer during the talk.
Sure. Do you want to go ahead with those? Great.
I'll go through those first and then you can
Yeah, awesome.
yeah. So someone asked, can you feed birds all year round? What do you recommend? Well, I personally feed them year round because I love birds so much. But bear in mind, you're not going to necessarily put out the same food. Like you wouldn't want to put suet out in the summer because it's going to get rancid and rotten. But you put it in the winter for the woodpeckers. And come early May, you put out grape jelly and spiked oranges, and you might attract the orioles. So yes, I feed all year round. But I do find that a lot of migrating birds, like those roast-breasted grosbeaks, when they come back in early May, they come to my feeders, but then often after a couple of weeks they stop, even though they didn't go anywhere. They're here breeding. But then once their babies fledge, they start coming back with the babies. So all of a sudden later in July, I can't keep up with keeping the bird seed out for them. And I think it's because parent birds know enough. They like to give their babies natural food, is my guess. And the other part of that question, or similar question, was what seed is best for winter birds and what's the best place to buy seed? And, in the winter, you really can't beat black oil sunflower seed. You're full of energy for the birds. The problem is it makes a mess. You get all the shells down and they'll kill the grass under your feeders. So I buy shelled sunflower seeds. You can buy those at some of the specialty stores. So the two main specialty stores that are really good are Wild Birds Unlimited in Burlington and Urban Nature here in Ancaster. And the great thing about shopping in them is you get expert staff. They can give you expert advice on different styles of bird feeders and different feed depending on what birds you wish to attract. And some people drive up to Bogle Farms. Have you ever heard of Bogle, Bogle? They're up on Safari Road in Flamborough, just north of us here. And then there you can buy, seeds in bulk. And the other last question was, why are mourning doves always so scared when I approach? Well, I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but all I can say is all birds, and in fact, all animals have a comfort level of how close they'll let you approach before they take off. And it can vary in species and even on individuals. So if you get too close, they're gonna take off. Okay, so that's everything that came in prior to the meeting.
Amazing. All right, so we're closing the prize draw entry. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to get in there. I know one person was trying to use the link a little bit later, so maybe you can help that person, Manuel, and then we can get ready for doing the live draw. So we have a couple of questions that came in during the talk, Bob. So one is the kestrel a merlin? This is a question from Chris W.
A merlin is a different falcon. So we have three falcons, the peregrine falcon, which is Hamilton city bird, the merlin, and then the kestrel. And the kestrel is the smallest of the three. So
Uh,
merlin and kestrel are two different birds.
okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Um, Somebody asked a question. Sylvie asked on your slide of the Anishinaabe bird names. Do you remember what the third name was, Bob?
No, but that will be in the handout.
Ah, that will be in the handout. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. All
That
right.
that that I included that slide so you can send that to everybody.
Okay. Wonderful. So I think is there anything left? We may have covered. Oh, so I think this might be our last question now. Um, so oh well, first before our last question, just I think you covered. There were a number of questions about the renaming effort, and you did mention, Bob, both the overall renaming and the renaming of birds that have been that just have a name of the person who discovered them, right? You
Yep.
mentioned. Okay, fantastic. So the last question is, what is with the name the bird Bell's Vireo?
Vireo.
Vireo, sorry, Vireo was the name of my camper when I was growing up as a kid. My family thought that was a really funny name, so I apologize. So Bell's Vireo. So
Vireo, Bell's
Vireo,
Vireo.
Vireo. Got it.
And
And we're at the
because it's
question.
named after me, it's not going to be renamed. They're going to keep it at Bell. I don't know who the Bell was that it's named for.
All right. Well, I think the person, Dave, who asked knew that it wasn't you, but thought it was very funny that there is a Bell's by Rio. Did I get it?
Vireo.
Okay, guys, we're gonna have to do this webinar for another half hour until Sue can pronounce Vireo correctly.
Vireo.
Did it? Okay. All right. All right. So I have a few quick slides to share. First, oh, sorry, wrong slide. Thank you, Bob, for donating your book for our lucky winner tonight and for your amazing presentation. That was really just so interesting. I never would have guessed that the names of birds would have kept my attention so well. So many great stories and insights and fun questions and pictures. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and passion for birding with us. It's just such a treat to have you join us. And Bob does invite folks to follow him on social media. So please feel welcome to do that, and we'll share more information in our follow-up email. We have a couple of actions that you can take. One is to treat your windows, and we'll send information about that in our follow-up materials. Um, and there's also a petition to ban rodenticide, which is just very harmful for wildlife, including birds that may prey on rodents that have been poisoned. And we also invite you to share your eco actions with Burlington Green. We're trying to get to 200,000 eco actions by the year 2030, and there's a handy online form that you can use. This eco actions campaign is possible with support from Burlington Hydro and the City of Burlington, which we're very grateful to. And here's some of the things that are coming up soon with Burlington Green. We have a variety of opportunities for people just like you to join our collective efforts to make a big impact for the planet locally. So this is just a sampling. We'll share the details in our follow-up email. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, you'll want to stay up to date with everything we're doing by signing up for our monthly newsletter. And we'll drop that link in the chat just so you have that handy. And a big thank you. We had a few uh, glitches at the start, but we're all set now, and we're just so grateful to Bob for sharing. We have a post-event survey. If you want to click the link in the chat now, you can complete that. You can also use the QR code, and we'll send it along afterward. Bob, thanks for putting a plug in for donating to Burlington Green. We really do depend on the support of community members to power our work and help us uh, connect with the community to learn about nature and take action to protect nature. We'll provide a link to give what you can. And we also are really grateful that this event is part of our Nature Friendly Burlington program, which is made possible through the City of Burlington. We're grateful for that support. So um, we're time to close up. It's hard to express, Bob, our gratitude for all your work putting together this fantastic presentation. And I want to give a shout out to Bob and Manuela. We set ourselves a high bar today to do some answering of questions, running a prize draw, and thank you so much. We made it through, and hope everyone really enjoyed it. Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you for hosting me. Thank everyone for attending, and sorry to keep you later than you intended with my technical glitches here, but we made it, thankfully.
No worries, no worries. We love to have you, and we're doing pretty good on time. I think we started maybe 15 minutes late, and we're closing just about 15 minutes after our planned time. So well done. All righty. Thank you very much, everybody. If anyone has any further questions, you're welcome to drop them in the chat there, and I think we can end our recording.